I have worked on probably every side of music. I used to work for a company called GDIC, Good Decisions in Sound and Lighting, which is a local company that worked with BET to do their sound and their lights when they were in town on New York Avenue. I also worked for a backline company. That's for those of you who don't know backline. That's for a company that sets up the instruments. So we used to do all of those things for the shy lights and the different groups that would come to the DMV. I left here maybe in 2008. And when I left here, I went to LA and I worked for a guy by the name of Teddy Riley as his engineer and a producer. And so I got to work on a lot of projects there. Unfortunately, my name is under his name. A lot of the work that I did goes right under the Teddy Riley brand. I was a part of that, the production camp. I also worked with Mikhail McKinney. And Mikhail was the son of Michael Jackson's bass player. But we got to work on Danity Kane's Damaged while I was there. So I've had a lot of opportunity. And so I've come back to the DMV to hopefully erect something that we can call our own. I am so excited to be here with this panel to talk about some of the things that I believe are touching us in a great way. And that basically is one, being Black and how that affects us in the music industry and even what do we do now socially. And two, how do we understand, our rights? What are our rights and what rights have been taken away from us? And what are the opportunities to actually step into some of these new places that are opening up for us? I think, due to the social movement that's going on, there's a lot of awareness. So how do we step into, how do we even start or begin to talk about messaging? Is that even important as an artist? What we put on a record, it's great to have great sounding music, but what we put behind our lyrics, how does that affect our society? And what should we be saying now? And so I'm excited. I'm glad that you guys invited me, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much, AJ. Tamara, do you mind speaking to us a little bit about your background?
Hello, everybody. I'm Tamara, and I'm a singer and a songwriter and producer. I've had executive produced 3 albums and a lot of dance music singles. I found my flow, I would say, in the dance music world almost a decade ago, and worked with a record company called Ultra Records. And that community has really embraced me. And I find that, more than anything, having people dance to your music is just something I really I did not know was possible for me. I live in Prince George's County, Maryland. I'm a part of the DC music scene, and I grew up in a small town in Southern Virginia. So I'm truly DMV, I think, even though the Southern Virginia is not considered part of the DMV. But I'm currently working on music. I have a special interest and I work extensively as a program manager and artist in the arts and healthcare world. And I also just have a personal mission to awaken peace, enthusiasm, and human connection through justice healing. I wouldn't consider myself a historian, but I do find the importance of documenting the voices particularly from my hometown, whose story I feel like need to be told. Yeah.
That was a wonderful introduction. Thank you so much.
I will add that I'm excited to be a part of this panel because all of the people that are here are just amazing. I've worked with in some capacity, and I'm really honored to be speaking with them.
Thank you so much. David, can you introduce us a little bit to you? David, are you there?
Hello, everybody. My name is Dave, or David Lindsey. People call me Dave, Davey Boy, whatever you want to call me. I'm David Lindsey. I am from the Washington, D.C. area, born and raised, currently living in PG County. I'm a graduate of Bowie State University, along with Tammy and AJ. Yeah, we all graduates. Been in the business now for about 20 years. Actually coming straight out of college, went straight to LA and began working with artists such as Lil Zane, then Loon from Harlem World, and also some of the work that I produced. I produced for Monica, A Dozen Roses, a part of the gospel group Seven Sons of Soul, who was nominated for a couple of Stellar Awards. Had a couple of, hit singles, Crystal Aiken, Bobby Jones, and like AJ, I've got a chance to work with Teddy Riley as well, Tracy Braxton, Raheem Devon, and also Tammy. I gotta throw her in there. Also produced a song for her, and also a couple of movie soundtracks. Why Did I Get Married? And A Family That Prays. And I also currently just recently put out a project of my own, like Tammy, dealing with mental health and so forth, relaxing, calming meditation music. And I put it out under my own alias artist name, Felix Wonder Project, called Face of the Deep. And so I am also a VP of production of a local record company called Soul World Entertainment, which CEO is Cliff Jones, my partner and manager. Also Tommy Reed. And what else? I'm passionate about music education and the progression of music, and also, knowing our rights when it comes to music, especially on the publishing side. So I'm happy to be a part of this panel tonight and this discussion that we are going to have tonight about music rights. And I hope it help a lot of artists that's out there that's trying to make their pathway into this music business. And I just like to also say that I'm a believer in Christ. I'm a disciple. So I always like to put that out there to make sure that it be known that who I serve and who blesses me.
Thank you for
That's
that.
it.
I appreciate it. Kenny, can you give us a walk through maybe your discography?
See if I can get unmuted.
You're unmuted.
You're unmuted.
Okay, there we go.
Good thing you
Good
weren't
evening.
saying something you didn't want us to hear.
Good evening, everybody. It's really an honor to be here. I am originally from Jacksonville, North Carolina. It's about an hour outside of Wilmington, if you're familiar with that coastal eastern region of North Carolina. I moved up to the DC DMV area about 20 years ago to study Spanish and pre-medicine at Howard University. And I've been here ever since. So language and music are probably some of the foundational elements of my professional life, but like the brother there, I'm also a believer, and my faith is the most important thing in my life. I have been a recording artist since about 2007 when I released my first record, I'm Sorry. But even prior to that, when I first got bit by the music industry bug, I was maybe a junior in college, and I was at a Rochelle Farrell concert at Blues Alley, and I asked her backstage after the show, what would she advise somebody who's interested in getting in the music business? And the very first thing she said was, make sure you understand how the business works. And she recommended a book to me that was written by Kashif. It was called Everything You Better Know About the Music Business. So that book that I read 17, 18 years ago was the foundational knowledge I walked into this crazy industry with in my back pocket. So I absolutely can agree and underscore everything that's been stated so far about the necessity of understanding the business, what your rights are, what rights have been in the past, so you can really walk in with clear glasses on, not rose-colored glasses. Beyond my musical side, I've recorded and performed with many legendary artists, including Rochelle Farrell, Mesa Leak, Eric Roberson, Gordon Chambers, Selena Johnson, Kanye Doss. I have been writing music equally as long and have been translating music for probably the last 12 or 13 years for some of those very same artists, including Patrick Lundy and Mom, who was Stellar nominated. I have been teaching Spanish for about maybe 15 or 16 years. The last about 8 or 9 of those I've been at Howard University, teaching on the faculty there. And in my spare time, I love giving back. I'm a mentor to many artists around the world, and I do lots of training on entrepreneurship and music with the State Department.
That is very interesting. Thank you so much. And then last but not least, Kennard, can you tell us a little bit about your background? I'm particularly interested in domain symbols.
Uh-oh. Well, my name is Kennard Cherry. I'm a multi-instrumentalist, producer. I'm born in Baltimore, raised in the DMV area. And yes, I'm one of the first Black symbol manufacturers established in the country. Domain Symbols, DOMAIN, symbols.com. I can post that later. And basically, my mission is to change lives one conversation at a time. And I've been doing that for a very long time. Even when I was a teenager, I would always pull people to the side, talk to them, there's things like that. And it was so natural. And then I adopted the name Uncle K at like 17 years old. And so it's a thing where, I've ended up being able to mentor so many people that are younger than me, older than me, same age, and those things. And even with my music, with Deborah Bond, Third Logic, established back in, actually, Third Logic came about really back in 97. And we went through three different versions of the same band. Every band we were in, it was like the rhythm section is tight. And so the rhythm section was me, Robbie McDonald, and Funky Chuck Evans. And so we just decided after the third band, no more bands. Let's just do production and let's just find artists that we want to work with. So we did albums with Deborah Bond. We've shared the stage with The Roots, Jaguar Wright, Mint Condition. We've done so many things. Actually, went on tour over in London and a couple of other places, and been able to use our original music to touch lives and those things. And also I've been playing in church most of my life. So I'm a late bloomer. I didn't start playing music till I was 13. And so I picked up a guitar at 13, started playing bass at 17, and I don't think I started playing drums till I was maybe 17 and a half. So it's just one of those things where I would like Dave, just God allowed me to do so many things, and I had the ability to do so many things that allowed me to touch more people and be in other places and things like that. And getting back to the symbols, that's another avenue that I use to be able to connect with our community, the music community, young musicians, to help to guide them even though they, domain symbols is a family. So when people come on board to be endorsed and all that stuff, they have a conversation with me after all the due diligence is done. People have, did their research and all that stuff. I have a conversation with them to find out where they are and let them know what we're looking to do together. It's not just about having a face and a name on a roster. It's a relationship. And so I will make sure their lives are impacted moving forward. And also that's that piece, but also it's a business. So we do have competition. I do stay in my lane because again, no one can do domain symbols like us. So that's the thing that I thrive on there. So that's pretty much all I have.
Wanted to kick off the questions with a question to you, Kennard. Have you ever considered becoming a professional coach, like a life coach? Has that ever crossed your mind?
No, it's been recommended that I do that. But no, I have never considered it. I think I can literally, I just told Tamara the other day, I can literally talk to people all day long and be happy.
I would say that you are a coach already. It's just unofficial.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
You coach me, but yeah, you are.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Well, that's definitely something I can look into because I know that's one thing I said in my retirement plan. I just want to travel the world and run my mouth. So
right. Talk to me. I know a program.
Well, guys, I'd like to go ahead and define a little bit what we're talking about here. So Tammy, why don't you define what music rights are?
It's a very simple definition. Music rights, whether it's in the 21st century or a century ago, is the ownership of music, the intellectual property, and the right to use it in various forms through licensing, mechanical synchronization licensing, performance rights, all of those, publishing. There's a myriad of ways to work in the music industry, but as a music creator, you automatically have a right in that regard, but it hasn't always been that way. I think, and I know we're going to talk about that a little bit more, about how it always hasn't been in favor of the music creator historically, especially for Black people. So I forgot to add that I'm also newly elected vice president of the Recording Academy for Washington, D.C. chapter.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And one of the things I feel strongly, one of the reasons why I joined, a lot of people may just see the Grammys as a part of the Recording Academy. I mean, it's a big part of being acknowledged, and having the award is a huge part of the Recording Academy chapter. But the other part that really resonates with me is advocacy, and Music Cares. Being able to have musicians being able to support, having support from an organization such as the Recording Academy is one of the reasons why I wanted to join as a member and get involved and see what was going on. But it's there where I get, there's the independent artist world, and then there's the record label world as well. And I feel like we're in a time now, the 21st century. The famous entrepreneur, businessman Robert Smith says that wealth can be created without having massive amounts of income. And I think that music is the way for many of us. And we, like, intellectual property is the least expensive way to build business. So over the years, as I've been working in the music industry, I've just learned to establish myself as a business in many different ways and different forms, and create intellectual property, music that I own. And that's I know we're going to get deeply into that, but that's the one thing that we have to keep pushing to our creators. Don't give your music away.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Kenny, can you pick that up and talk about the entrepreneurship piece that you teach your students, your clients, as it relates to the music rights piece?
Absolutely. As you may or may not know, every country has different laws and regulations as to how compositions are controlled, how copyrights are administered, and that is really the ground level. You have to know how to copyright the music, where to copyright the music, what particular interpretations of music can be copywritten. For example, if I change the lyrics to a song that already exists, you have to get permission from the publisher, from the writers to make that change, and for that new composition to be presented as a combination of your creativity and the original writer's creativity. Little things like that that people may not know, that sending an email could serve in court as documentation of the copyright. Back in the day, we called it a poor man's copyright, where you put the lyrics or even a recording in an envelope and you mail it to yourself, and that post stamp could serve in court as a copyright, as long as that document, that envelope remain unopened. That is the foundational level. And contracts. If you just sing 2 notes on somebody's recording, if you just say, if you write 1 word as a part of a composition, have it in writing what your arrangement will be, because that could become a #1 best-selling hit. And if you don't have an email, a contract, something written explaining what your agreement is with the rest of the people who are part of that production, you will not be getting any money.
Okay.
Don't do any work, creative work, until you have some type of agreement. I don't care if it's your friend, if it's Johnny Gill, if it's the estate of Whitney Houston. If you do not have something officially written down in an email or something, don't even begin the creative process, because it can cause rifts between friends, because I've seen that happen. And you just want to be very clear as to how the business will be handled on the back end.
So I have a 2-part question. You said that a book was recommended to you to read to get to know more about the music business.
Yes.
Did simply reading that book give you what you needed to just take off and run? Did you have a mentor? And then the second part is, if you can give a little bit more detail about the email, as far as having that documentation, the email serving as documentation.
Well, I'll start with the email. I'll work backwards.
Okay.
Basically, we are not lawyers, the majority of us. Marcus Johnson, he is a lawyer and a musician, so he's a very rare exception. But for those of us who are not lawyers, we don't know legalese and how to word contracts. If you just simply state, I will record this song for this percentage of the publishing, and having the other person reply to that and say, I agree. That will work, until you can afford to get a lawyer to draft up a document, or to pay a lawyer to give you like a basic type of agreement that you can use for different types of transactions. So let's see, the book. I think that the main thing the book helped me, and anybody who decides to read it, everything you better know about the music industry, music business. It gives you a very broad understanding of the different aspects of the business: contracts, royalties, record labels, distribution. Even though the music business is a lot different from when he wrote that book, those tenets still remain in place. If you know what to look for as something, as a bad contract, he has some examples of that in the book. He has examples of all types of contracts. The main thing is to kind of wrap your head around how that legal language works. If you can get an idea for the clauses that basically want to have you be the slave of the record company for the rest of your life, kind of have an idea of what those things look like. That gives you an idea of what you're walking into. But to be honest, I still got swindled. I still work with producers who, got over on me, and I paid them a whole lot of money and they did a horrible mix on my records. They promised that they were going to put it in the hands of so-and-so, and it never happened. So a lot of it, just like any industry, you can read 1,000 books, but you're going to learn the most as you're doing it. As you talk to other people, you get their experience, like Rochelle or Kennard or Tamara or Deborah, all of my colleagues. I learned so much from everybody. You are a lifelong learner in this business because it's changing every day.
Thank you so much for that, Sean.
Yes, David, Davy Boy, you mentioned in your background that you love to inspire and motivate artists. Exactly how do you do that, and what does that mean in terms of musical rights? How do you capture what you're creating and create the stream of income that should flow?
Well, I like to motivate artists by helping them understand, what they're entitled to when it comes to their rights in music. And so me as a producer, I work with a lot of songwriters all the time. And one of the things that I have here in my studio, I have laying around here somewhere, is a split sheet, split sheet. And that split sheet, is what Kenny referred to as a document that says, I wrote this percentage, in the song. We break it down, the percentage in the song sometimes with respect to, the hook, is pretty much like 25% of the song or 50% of the song in terms of, lyrics versus 10, 15%, something like that. But to kind of make it easy for some of us, we just split it down the middle, to not even go into a long drawn out thing of how much, who wrote what. But, some writers are specific about, hey, I want my share, I want this, particular percentage. So, I inspire, or I, teach writers and producers, what they're entitled to by helping them understand percentage wise in a record, what they're, entitled to when it comes to their creative part in it. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's pretty much, how I do from a producer standpoint, and inspire or, helping artists understand, what rights they have in the song.
So it does sound like there's a sort of a mentorship that's happening.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Absolutely a mentorship. Yeah.
Kennard?
Just call my name?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Okay. So one main question is, it may be kind of general, but I'm going to pose this one to AJ. In regard to music rights, now, what is the biggest difference between, I would say, major label things and then independent, like far as understanding how rights work, and like far as going to the studio recording for for an artist and that type of thing, and producing for an artist, but versus being independent where you are the producer and the artist? Like, how do you navigate those worlds? Like, what's the best way to capitalize in both aspects?
I think one of the first things that you have to understand is that if you sign to a label, they're making an investment. And so they want to cash in on their bottom line. A lot of what major labels are doing right now, because the record industry has changed. We're not just selling records anymore. 360 deals are real. And essentially what that is saying is that anything that you make derived from the record label, they get a piece of. As an independent, you know, essentially you don't have the backing of a record label. So you may find a investor to invest in you, or you may invest in yourself. And so you have more of the rights to move your music, which is called administrative rights. You have the ability to, you know, again, get as much of the royalty cap as you can. If the record label comes in, they're going to want to get back what they put in. And a lot of times, you know, unfortunately, you know, younger artists, we look at the advance and we're like, oh man, just give me as large of an advance as we can get. The only problem with that, and this is changing slightly, is that when you get that advance, you're placed on a royalty recap, meaning that instead of like for $1 or $1 for $1, essentially you are getting a percentage of that dollar that's going against your royalty before you even get paid. So you're paying back that advance, you know, and then on top of that, you're not paying it dollar for dollar. They're getting interest just like a bank would. So it is a question of whether you have the finances to, and the time, because, you know, we are in a time now where a lot of people want it right now. They want to be Beyonce right now. And if you're willing to pay the price, you know, that may be there for you. I've talked a number of times about the Toni Braxton deal. A lot of people I've talked to talk about how bad the deal is. But the question is, would Toni be Toni Braxton without the bad deal? You know, and so that really is a balancer where we are when it comes to rights. Like, you have the right to own your own music. You have the right to promote and to push, especially with the internet. You have the right to push your own music. You can be your own record company. But how much do you believe in yourself? And how much are you willing to give up to get to where you want to go? Or how much are you willing to do to push what you have to get it out there and to do what, you know, what you feel like you're called to do? Because I feel like everybody has something that they can essentially give, but how bad do you want to give it? What can you do to help market it?
Mm-hmm. And in regard to that's the next piece to that was marketing, was my question. And we have spoken offline, and you were talking about the machine, you know, as it relates to marketing. So how big is that machine of marketing, even though they have access to the exact same thing the independent artists do? What is the big pivot there as far as access? Because labels have changed. So,
well, I mean, I think this complete business is about relationship. The record label has been, you know, really building their relationships from day one. And, you know, I often say, if you go into a record label, you're going to deal with family. And what I mean by that is we grew up together, or we went to school together. Dave, you know, mentioned that we went to Bowie State together. My son is in the process of going to Berkeley in Boston. When I was out in California, it was about who you knew. The record label knows the distributor. They have relationships with them. They've made money with them. You know, we see different people, different independents becoming successful because they knew what they had to do to foster their relationships. And so, you know, although we have some independents successful, when we talk about the machine, we are talking about literally something that has been going on for a very long time. And let's just be honest, when it comes to distribution, we start to go into organized criminal things, the mob. That's real. And so that gives I guess a jump start, especially when we're talking about now, to independents coming in and kind of fighting with these major labels to get positions. The majors, they kind of own the record. They own the radio stations, even on the internet. The the ability for them to get to Apple and to get to Spotify and to get to, the companies that are pushing our music is great. And so, again, it's about fostering relationships. And even if you want to be an independent, I really believe that it's great to know those people who are in the engine, who may be able to give you a hand, who you may be able to hire, because the industry is breaking apart. The industry is having to reorganize. The internet did some damage. And I think it's given us opportunities as local record labels, as well as independents who want to stand on their own to do just that. But again, it's about how bad do you want it? Are you willing to go to LA to the conferences, to meet the producers and the really the people who are creating the content, to get some strategic alignment with them to get that project off the ground?
Thank you so much, AJ. Tamara, I want to ask you, you seem to have collaborated with so many people, so many groups over the course of your career. How do you form those collaborations? And I guess because we're talking about music rights, how do you protect your rights as you're collaborating?
That's a good question. I would say I'm a networker, and I find people interesting. I like people and I like their stories. So I will ask questions, and I'm curious about other creators and people who are working in the industry, or venue owners, or organizations who I find that are doing very unique things that resonate with me. I will connect with organizations and partner in many. So networking is a part of, and building community, I would say, around me. But I don't, when I go into it, I don't see it as building around me. But what happens is that I end up having all of these people who end up having a network. And a lot of people that I can call upon to contract out for, recording or production, or, band members or graphic designers, or managers for that matter, from time to time. I will say that my first experience in the music industry, if it were not for Dave Lindsey, I would not be in the music and know half of what I know, I would say, because it was at Bowie State where I'm sitting there walking around. We were in the jazz ensemble, and I saw, these guys going out. I'm from a world where I didn't know gigging life, right? It was just musicians in the church, and that's it. But here, when I came to the area, I was like, oh, these guys are gigging. Oh, I would love to do something like this. And I remember asking to sit in for one of their gigs. And from that moment, I just kept asking, and kept seeking out. And Dave put me in the recording booth and whipped me into shape as we went to go showcase for Hollywood Records. And but I feel like, I've gotten training on the ground. I did enroll in Omega School for Recording Arts and Sciences and took the music business course, because I figured if I'm going to be in this as a music creator, I need to know the business of what I'm doing. So it's just coming from that space of not ruling anyone out because, they might not be at a certain level, or looking at where I want to be and finding a connection with a person or some part of an industry where I would want to be, and just staying in contact with people. I think that's one of my strengths. As AJ was saying, relationships are everything. And I've had to suck up my fear and walk up to people and say, hey, I made this work, or I'm interested in making this project. Can you help me? Or I made this, I did this at the Winter Music Conference. I walked up to Oshunlade and you know, with a little push from a friend, like, go talk to him. I didn't even know who he was at first. And I said, well, you know, let me go introduce myself, tell him what I'm doing. It's about, I had a little confidence, and little confidence took me, you know, a step further into meeting the right people. And I will say, trust in God. Like for me, it was all about like this gut feeling, and understanding where I want to go in purity and in heart with my voice, and trusting my gut with it and going and taking that step. So it's a bit of strategy, but it's also a bit of spirituality for me. And that's how I live my life in this music world.
I have kind of a follow-up question. It ties back to a little bit of what AJ was talking about in term, and maybe you can give us some insight, Tamara. I think we looked at an article recently about the history of Black labels. And is there anything that you gleaned from looking at that?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't read that article, but
okay, let me summarize it.
Though.
Yeah, let me summarize it. Sugar Hill was in there, and a number of others that are older and historic. Some maybe one was based in Teaneck, New Jersey. Various labels, but like label after label after label defunct in 3 years. Business. The music gets bought at some kind of bankruptcy, sale. So, what are we doing now? And this is a question to the whole panel. What are we doing now to protect our legacies?
Well, Sean, I think AJ can go ahead and get started on that one. He had mentioned some things earlier. So AJ, why don't you take that?
Yeah, because you mentioned Sugar Hill. I like Motown. I think that one of the things that we have to talk about, maybe just as Black people amongst each other, is, are we even trying to preserve legacy, or are we just chasing dollar bills? I think, that is a conversation that we have to have amongst each other, because in the era of Motown, it is the one time that we controlled our own music. We controlled our own image. One of the things that I'm realizing about just music in general, going to LA, is that as African Americans, when we put things on wax, when we create a video, it starts to paint a picture of us around the world. And so, when I look at Motown and I think about the artists that came out of Motown and the records and the lyrics that were on those records, I see music that uplifts us. I see music that really starts to lift us up as a people. There were some crazy things that happened in the money aspect of Motown when it came to paying the musicians and producers, and that seems to be a record that we play over and over again in the unfortunately at the Black record labels. Looking at those labels like Sugar Hill and Motown, that's one of the things that we see over and over again. The finances seem to be a place where we have some disagreements. And then when it comes to ownership, we're willing to sell, and I said this, and this is a hard thought, but we're willing to sell our birthright to get as much money as we can as individuals. And I will pose the question to Kennard and to Dave, to Tammy, and I guess everybody on the panel is like, what do you guys think about that? Because I constantly hear messages from the artists that sometimes I record and am challenging the younger artists. Let's go get paper. We got to get that paper. And in getting that paper, there are multiple ways to play this game. And a lot of times people are willing to sell their publishing for higher dollars. They can get quick money. And so I guess, yeah, I'm going to you, Dave. What are you seeing, man? Like, honestly, because as a producer, it's disheartening. Yeah, what are you seeing on your side of things?
Okay, there we go. What to go back to the question that was asked, I think publishing is the key. When you look at why some of these Black labels folded, was because they didn't master the side of publishing, which publishing is what Tammy talked about earlier, the sync license and getting it in film, TV, and sheet music. That's another thing that's forgotten about, sheet music. And so what white labels did was they, established publishing companies, a part of their record company. And so therefore, they were able to basically just, feed off of one song, in many different places, getting music streams from, like I said, TV and film and so forth. And so, I think right now, if we could get an understanding of that and how it works, especially now that the internet is here. And so, we could get publishing off of, a lot of YouTubers, what I'm saying? Like YouTubers who have these channels and who have a lot of followers and so forth, establishing relationships with them and say, hey, play my song as an introduction to your show or something like that, or outro in your show, something like that. That's publishing. It's a small publishing with respect to how it's paid out right now, but the main thing is to continually, constantly playing it and having it in streams where it's, making money. If I'm making any sense to what you're saying, AJ, but that's what I think.
I got a question for you though, Dave, and because this is it is a great conversation in regards to publishing. Like, like I do, that a lot of these labels are signing producers to be staff producers, and one of the deals is, if I sign you to be a staff producer, I may give you a small percentage of the publishing. Mm-hmm. But I keep the publishing. And so, I think you're right. A lot of our Black organizations don't understand publishing, but up until this point, up into the internet, we had to deal with distribution, and there were no African-American distribution companies. Master P had the distribution out of his trunk.
He was the king of it.
And so in regards to that, I guess this is a question to throw at you, Tammy, because you and Dave are with the Recording Academy. Like, how are we dealing? Because I've seen, and producers' names will remain nameless in this regard, but I've seen records come in to certain record labels, and because there's ownership of lyrics, there's separation with ownership of lyrics and music. I've seen a record label go, hey, we love the song, but we need to reproduce the music, because they wanted the staff producer on, so they could get more of the publishing. And that's a game at the top that happens all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. That kind of happened to me in the sense of when I produced a Dozen Roses for Monica, and Missy wrote the song, what have you, but it was a point where almost, if it wasn't for Cliff Jones fighting for me to make sure I got my publishing, I wouldn't have gotten any publishing, because they wanted to do the same thing. They wanted me to come in and, nobody knows who you are kind of thing. So can you, you know, can you do this, you know, type of thing. And if it wasn't for Cliff Jones fighting for, you know, me to have my publishing in that song, I would have never received any publishing. And so, I mean, I just think right now that with respect to what you just said, I mean, it's important to know how this game works with publishing. It's so important, you know, because if you don't know how it works, then, you know, you're going to, you know, get taken advantage of all the time, you know. And it's important that you know, we teach, you know, those who are uneducated about that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and on that same topic, in regard to, I think AJ, you mentioned about kind of like trying to like sell your soul to get, you know, just to get your music out there. I remember back in my early 20s, I was with a situation where they did exactly the same thing. We produced everything, played, did the live shows. She went to LA. Next thing you know, it's like, well, we like the music, but we want it to be recorded with our guys out here. And we were willing to pay, and I think what it was, we had a discussion. They were willing to pay us like a good amount of money just for us to walk away from the publishing. Yes, now, you know, if I had the mindset I have now, I probably would have did something with it. But I was so young, I was like, man, this is great. I can go get as many cheeseburgers as I want. But it was one of those things where I really had to think about it, and we declined because, again, I was not willing to just let all of that go just like that, because it was a lot of work that went into it. You know, so I had forgot all about that till you started talking about it.
Yeah, and it's really good, because a lot of times, man, that's when, unfortunately, this is where the record company decides whether they're going to gaslight the marketing or they step back. You know, sometimes it really is that serious. Like, if you don't give us X amount of, you know, the publishing, then we're going to basically sit on your records. And I think to the younger artists that are maybe watching or listening, I would say, you know, you absolutely have to know what this game is. If you walk into the record label with your dreams in your hands, they are going to shape and mold you in whatever way they can to that it benefits them. Unless, and there's the God factor. You know, all of us. There's the God factor, man, because God puts people and things in our, I guess, around us to fight for us. Because you mentioned Cliff, and I know, you know, not just on your behalf, Dave. I've heard the stories of Cliff, you know, going in and hammering. But
yeah,
man, it's crazy. You know, the record, people talk about the gangs in LA. I want everybody to know the largest gang in LA is the record business. Period.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
I would say, like, as an artist, there is this, I think this started in the 90s, and some people still have this mentality. But as an artist, I've struggled with this. I thought that somebody was going to come along and make me, or, you know, somebody was going to, you know, and that has happened, you know, record labels, A&Rs, you know, break artists and all of that stuff. But there's this yearning, I think, sometimes for artists to be found, to have somebody take care of them, to explain everything to them. Artists not realizing that they're the owners of this work. You know, of course, it's partnerships, but there was, and it took me a long time to realize it, because even now I still I'm not really in the music business, you know, because, but I am, you know, I'm a part of it. It's a whole ecosystem, right? But there is this notion that I think my generation right now, sometimes we still have to fight. I don't know about the next generation. They might not have this thing, but that somebody's going to come and save you, and somebody's going to come and put you on. And it doesn't work like that. No, it doesn't work like that for me. I gotta go for it. I don't, you know, I can't wait for somebody to say, all right, Tammy, you good enough. You can do this now. I'll be forever indebted to somebody else's dream, and they don't know what's in my dream. You know what I mean? So
you guys, this has been just so good. There's so much there to even respond to and follow up on. But there were a couple things I did want to ask. I'm sorry, Kennard, did you have something to say?
No, I was gonna we were gonna pivot and shift gears to the next topic, but after your questions, though.
Okay. Well, I kind of wanted to address AJ's question a little bit when he said that, you know, I don't think it's just the young kids, the young ones coming up that want to get everything now instead of waiting. It's so hard to be patient, not just in this generation, but if you're not used to having much and then all of a sudden you're given this whole pile of money, resources, it's kind of hard to walk away from that. So what I wanted to say about that part is that I think if we can become more educated financially, if our financial literacy and education can increase, I think we'll find that we won't fall into that trap of taking that kind of deal. You know, kind of knowing that it's not the best deal, but saying it'll work out in the long run. I think if we could do that, it would help. It would make a difference. And then to Tammy, if you can speak to kind of the history, because sometimes in order to see where we are, we have to see where we've been, right? So if you can walk us a little bit through the history of music rights and shed some light on that would be great. And then AJ, if you have a follow-up comment on that, go ahead, please. Oh, Tammy, before you, sorry, AJ, did you have a follow-up response?
Oh no, I think that you're right. I think that we absolutely need to be educated in our finances. I just think we live in a microwave time, you know, and I think that it's like anything else. We're looking. I think it's how we look at wealth. By the way.
Okay.
I think that if you, for instance, if I were to give you a farm, would you say, "Oh man, he gave me land," or would you say, "What am I supposed to do with this?"
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Let me sell it. Let me get rid of it. And I want to say this real fast. It's kind of funny because I have 2 kids, and I said, "Hey, you know, I've been working with these kids since they got here about wealth and all of that stuff." And they said, "Hey, Dad, you know, we love music, and when you die, we're gonna sell everything." And I'm like,
oh no.
I got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
You know, because again, for them, it's like, oh man, this is just instruments and this is what we do. So as long as we keep our drums and bass and piano and stuff, then we're cool. They don't understand legacy. They don't understand worth. And it takes time. It takes sacrifice. Sometimes sometimes you can't go get tennis shoes and the best car and all of those things. And so we are steadily seeing these images in front of us of artists with the cars and the houses and the money. And so you're right, when they get to the table and, you know, the person says, "Hey, I'm going to give you $50,000 for your song." Okay, cool.
Yeah, not realizing it's in perpetuity.
Yep.
But then I think it's akin to when, you know, you look at the folks that are in front of the camera versus behind the camera, or the folks that are on the stage versus the people that are behind producing and doing the other things where the money is really made, whereas it seems like it's in front, but it's really behind, if you know what I'm saying.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm sorry for butting in, but it's to what I said earlier about publishing. I mean, music is intellectual property, and to what you were saying about the whole financing piece, you know, yes, to understand how important publishing is, because, you know, if you understand how you can, you know, utilize your music in so many different ways and platforms and so forth, you know, it's intellectual property. It's
That's right.
You know, residual income forever, you know?
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's what we have to start pushing and educating ourselves and each other on. Go ahead, Tammy.
You know, I'm reading this book called Barracoon, and it's about the last African cargo that has come to America. And he talked about his accounts being on a slave ship and being property So even just the and one of the things that in this book, this interview, Dornan Hurston actually did the interview. She's the genius of the South. He breaks out into song and music, like he has it in his heart and his spirit. The culture is all there, right? So here you are. Then you have the Chain Gang, and they're singing on it, to the rhythm of the steel. They're making music, and it's a very communal and survival way of living. Like this music, the drum, all of that. It was never for I think Black culture. It was never looked at as, oh, I'm going to have ownership of what has come out of my mouth. So it really hurt I know the soul of Black people when this music that comes from the heart. We're talking about, I'm going into copywriting a little bit, because that wasn't even a one in 1909, when the copyright law was first enacted. We weren't even considered human.
Right.
So here we have this music that's created and that comes from our soul, that's recorded, and you don't have, you were not considered property at that time, but we did not have the rights to things. Now, fast forward to copyright 1976, when anything that you created in whatever, and it had to be informed, and that's where I think the discrepancy is with Black folks. We'll just be making music just because it feels good. It comes from where we are, not thinking about putting it, like, if it's captured in a form that somebody can own that, because it just wasn't a part of our culture. So we got exploited and stolen from. This is a short version of music rights, from early 1900s to now. So I think a bit of that still exists, just we getting together, we jamming, we loving it, everything's feeling good. But not understanding that in this world, in this American capitalist society, it is about property and ownership when it comes to copyright in a form, not an idea, because we're full of ideas. But if you don't put that idea into some type of format, you don't own anything. How many inventions have we had as Black people that we will never have the credit for?
Exactly.
And I see one patent for
hated this.
Yep. Yep.
To what you're saying, Tammy, it's a perfect example out right now, and I'm just praying to God that that this little kid has people behind them that know what they're doing, and that's the little kid that sung that song, "I Just Want to Live," and it went viral.
Yeah.
So he just recently got a record deal off of that song. He got a record deal off of that song.
Right.
Wow.
And I'm like, and it was with a major record label. It was with Warner Records and Warner Brothers. And I'm like, I hope and pray that he has the right people behind him, because I already see, what they were probably thinking they could do with that song. And so I just pray to God that he has the right people behind him.
Yeah.
Because if not, he will never see a dime of that.
Well,
take it.
It's interesting. It's not related to this, but AJ's been telling me for a while to watch The Food That Built America.
Amen.
And you talking about somebody again, like McDonald's. Let's just take that for an example. They had a great idea. They sold the company for $2 million.
Yes, sir.
Sold the company for $2 million and said they just want to retain ownership of their one original place. And now they have over 37,000 locations around the world. And those guys they didn't even get recognized for creating it. And I would say for our people, as it relates to creating stuff, that's what happens a lot. Have a good idea. Oh, here's $300, no problem. And it's making multi-millions while they're still trying to figure out how to eat tomorrow. And that's why we have this discussion. Music rights. It's very important intellectual property.
Kennard, before we pivot to the next section, can I ask a question? There are organizations out there that ostensibly manage music rights, BMI, ASCAP, but there's one CSAC that is good for artists? Could someone discuss that one?
I'm with CSAC. CSAC is a newer company. And I know, especially when I was in LA, I was heavily involved. And so they used to do something called a songwriter boot camp that they did every year. And they would bring young artists or new and upcoming artists to a forum to actually play that music, to discuss that music. It gave you the ability to network with each other. You had direct connect with the person who invited you in, because CSAC is what makes it different from BMI and ASCAP is that you literally have to have a sponsor to get into CSAC. And so, you know, what happens there that I think is great is that if I was a writer and I needed to find a producer, I could make a phone call and say, hey, I'm in Nashville, I'm in New York, and I'm trying to you know, find someone to help me with this, and they could direct me. CSAC is, again, because it's smaller, I think it's becoming very much like an ASCAP because it's getting larger, and the larger you get, unfortunately, the more people you have to handle, and so you're going to have to be more engaged. You're going to have to be more of the child with their hand up in the front of the classroom going, don't forget me. I'm here, because they're starting to get a lot of, you know, the larger artists that are moving their catalogs, but I think they're a great organization. And I'm a part of BMI, CSAC, and ASCAP as a publisher. And a lot of people don't know you can do that as a publisher. You can't do it as a writer.
Exactly.
You can be with all of them.
Yep.
Wow.
I didn't know that.
That's
Great
fascinating.
information. Thank you.
Yeah, you could do that.
Yep, and it just helps. Go
I
ahead.
have a question about that, because I do a lot of music for TV shows, and a lot of times they don't like when you have a part of your publishing catalog with another PRO. Why is that, Matt? Is there like a issue with the accounting? It was never clearly articulated to me why they were saying that a portion of it would never be reported if you include multiple PROs.
Well, you wouldn't have to include PROs. Like, the deal is, if I worked with a writer that's with ASCAP, I want my reporting to be with ASCAP, because I don't want CSAC to try to track down what ASCAP is doing. So, you know, again, I think it really depends on the record company. We work with I think it's Viacom. My boy Flip Matrix did The Wire, and there were all three of the pros were involved. So I think it just depends on who you're dealing with. I'm not sure about the accounting side of things, because I haven't had those issues.
And guys, can you just say real quick, what does PRO mean?
Performance rights
Organization.
Organization. Okay, thank you. Kennard, I know we need to move on, but I am still into this topic right here.
This. I mean, again, let's just stick with what's flowing right now, because there's a lot of good information coming through. Other people are going to see this after this live is done. And I want to make sure that, again, we give as much information as we can possibly give to educate musicians that have the questions that we had 10, 15, 20 years ago, maybe even yesterday. So.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to direct this to Tammy, but all of you all jump in. So Tammy, you had talked earlier about a new organization that has come online. Could you give a little bit of the history of that, and then talk about what benefit it is, what it's serving, how it's serving people, and how to get involved in it?
So for the last 5 years, the music advocacy groups and Recording Academy have been pushing to have the rights of music creators be at the forefront instead of the publishing companies and radio stations and all. And so there's this act called the Music Modernization Act that was just passed. And what that act is to update our update the laws and the ways that that companies can collect, well, music creators can collect, through this electronic, this 21st century way of business right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, if you're in the music, if you're putting out any records, music, whatever, you know that you have to put down, metadata is number one. Like, you have to have everything tracked in order to receive the proper credit, the proper royalty, publishing, all of that. And so what this organization is called, MDL, oh my gosh, let me just pull up what it stands for.
No
quickly.
problem.
I'm sorry. It's MLC. It's a mechanical licensing collective, and it's being formed right now. It's going to administer the blanket license and digital. It's a coordinator for digital licensing. So I don't know what all that means just yet, but I know that it's going to be a great organizer for music creators so that they can get have a direct line in collecting what's theirs. So, and it's through Congress, through government. So I would suggest, I would just say, look up MLC. It's the Mechanical Licensing Collective. They'll get started in January of next year. Right now it's being established.
Okay.
And it's about having a public accessible database containing all the information for musical works, so that, I guess it makes it an easier process so these companies, ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, they don't have to go searching so far or what have you, or might not be there. I mean, I don't want to get too personal to talk about my publishing, but I will say it's it can be pennies and cents sometimes. And I'm just like when you're collecting with Spotify and all of these other streaming stations, it's like, are you serious? No matter how many streams I have, there's a small percentage of what we get. So that's what's,
Can I jump on to what Tammy
Yes,
is saying?
please go ahead.
One of the things is, I think that, because Dave keeps hitting on this, is intellectual property. But I think that we have to learn how to navigate our intellectual property.
Yes.
We're in a time where people give your music away. And if you don't understand that, then you're still trying to sell records for 99 cents. People don't even buy albums anymore. They go through and they go, I like this song, but I don't like that song. I remember a day when you had to buy the whole album. And then it didn't matter what song you liked. So I think, if we can talk a little bit about the navigation of this, because I think we're in a branding world. And if you understand that, intellectual property can be leveraged into branding. And what I mean by branding is into, like, athletes get shoe deals. And that's one of the things that I gathered from working with large A-list producers, is that this isn't just about selling your records. If you look there, then you only see pennies at a time. But this really is about, what leverage do you have to go into different venues and make money?
Yeah.
And music is your bridge to get there.
If I could add to that, I will say the biggest lesson I learned immediately when I started in the business, and this was right when it started becoming very digital, the 2000s till now, was that the music itself is not the most important thing. And that was the hardest thing for me to really come to grips with. The business, of course, is the foundation, but beyond that is understanding that everything you do is monetizable.
Yes,
and the brand is like the foundation of all of it. So as people buy into you in your likes and the what's the word? The interactions increase between you and the public. That's what generates the interest of the labels, of the management companies, of the booking agencies. And I won a jazz vocal contest in Switzerland at the Montreux Jazz Festival, and I thought that was going to write my ticket. Quincy Jones was a part of the selection, and I was really excited, but it didn't do much. It did help build relationships, but what I learned when I started talking to executives during that time in my career, they cared about metrics. They wanted to see if you went to a small bar in a small village in Italy, if 100 people would come, and that artists need to realize is leverage. So, if you're building up this platform for yourself as a brand, you have a blog, you have a live stream, you have merchandise, you have, you do interpretation or translation. All these things are extensions of who you are. And that's building money, bringing money into your business. So whenever you walk into a label or a management company, you can't just accept anything they offer you. You have to have a full assessment of what you're worth, what you're generating, and what they can offer to enhance that.
Yeah.
Kenny,
Those are very good points.
I was going to say, Kenny, you're talking about business propositions. And I think a lot of times we don't talk from that perspective as artists. Like as an artist, most of the artists that come in, I ask the question, how much money have you spent on your project already? And what's the cap? Most artists don't even know how much money they spent. They just know, man, I got $5. And
that's it. Brother, I can't tell you how much I spent on my first album because I was just so in love with the whole process. I was just spending and spending and spending. And then you start getting credit card debt and you're getting older and you want to have a house and you want to have a new car and you've spent everything on this dream. And that's just not wise. Like you have to look at it as Bill Gates or an investor would look at a business venture. Like what is the risk? How much am I willing to risk? And how does this fit in the framework, the overall framework of my life?
A lot of head nodding here.
Yeah.
You're on mute, Dave. Get off of mute.
Are you good now?
You're 1,000% right. As an artist, you have to treat yourself literally as a corporation. You gotta treat yourself as a business, and you gotta take into account of all the expenditures that goes along with, your project. You have to take that, and so it helps you to even in the creative process. You can't go and say I'm gonna go spend money on some strings and not taking account for that, not taking account for that in that, okay, later on the line, I need to pay for mastering, so, it's so true.
But you gotta have a budget. I've had artists like stop talking to me because I said, where's your budget? They would just record stuff and release stuff, no budget.
Well, the other part of this is
you have to have a budget and a coach.
Yep. Well, the other part of this is some of your producers are even going as far in the creation process. And Dave, you said this, but in the creation process, I remember working with Teddy and him saying, "Hey, who was it? Victoria's Secret has a line coming out. They have money to market. What can I do? I need to create a song for Victoria's Secret so that I can get that money." I don't think like we think this thing through. So we end up a lot of times, again, talking about rights. You come to me and say, record me, but you have no marketing plan. Have no idea of when those releases are going to be released and how you want them to roll out. There's this just kind of nonchalant approach to being creative. And if you're going to do this, it's called an industry for a reason. It is a business.
Yes.
And if you hold it as such, then you know that your product that you're selling is your intellectual property, and you have to know how to maneuver it, because even if you have it in your hands, you can own the song. You can get all that we're talking about today and still not make money.
True.
Mm-hmm.
True.
Yeah.
That's very true.
Very true.
Ooh,
Very true.
Yeah, y'all.
that's all good stuff. And
You gotta
obviously,
pass the offering plate, you know.
For real.
yeah, that, and plus we can go on another like 3-4 days.
Yeah. Hey, so hold on. We're gonna pause right quick. And it's AJ's birthday today. I didn't say that in the beginning.
Oh wow, man!
Happy birthday,
Happy birthday. Yes, sir.
Tammy.
Happy birthday, AJ.
Tammy, lead us in song here.
Yeah, sing, Tammy.
All right, Kenny. Okay.
Hold on. Did we just talk about intellectual property? Hold on. What are we doing?
Can we see? Do we have permission to sing "Happy Birthday"?
This is public domain.
My middle name.
Birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear AJ. Happy birthday to you.
Yay, Tammy. So, okay.
Up in there, Kenny. On the delayed.
Right?
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
Yeah.
Birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
All right. Very nice.
Oh man.
We've got a few minutes left. I just wanted to have you all do 3 takeaways, 3 things that you would suggest to people who are just getting started, who are in the business, whatever status they're in when it comes to their publishing, when it comes to music rights. Just 3 things that you can suggest to them to take action on today.
I would say have a plan.
Okay.
I always work from a plan, the end goal, and work my way up so I can take step by step. And that includes the budget, creating an entity,
Okay.
and speak your truth through whatever you're creating.
Nice. Thank you. Next.
Be nice to everybody. You don't know who you're gonna need. That's just the golden rule. Treat others the way you want to be treated. But in business, since it is, like AJ said, built on relationships, you have to respect everybody. And even if you don't think you'll ever need them, you never know. They might be connected to your next blessing. Okay. Make sure you read all the articles that you can find about the business, read Billboard, join all those newsletters for different music publications, join some type of trade organization. I'm also a member of NARAS, the Grammys. Join your local songwriters association, join your regional music association. All of those things you can learn about your craft, not only, but the business, and really network.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dave?
Dave.
No, you go ahead.
Go ahead. You go ahead.
I'm gonna take a quote from the Bible. Study to show yourself approved, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. And in this case, when it comes to music rights, man, you got to study. You got to know the game. The next thing I would say is, man, surround yourself with great people. You need a team. You cannot do this by yourself. Someone who makes it to the top by themselves is a target. Someone who makes it to the top with a group of people is a movement. You don't want to be a target. And the last thing is, I think that you have to put yourself out there. You can't be scared to take a step. You gotta put yourself out there and really in the way of success, and you will get caught up.
All right.
I'm gonna take a quote from Maya Angelou, where she says, "You can't use up creativity. The more you use, the more you have." And so, just be creative, especially in this time. This is a perfect opportunity for you to just create. Really in a moment where, life is throwing everyone a curveball. But if you're an artist, this is the perfect time for you to be creating. And the other thing is to understand what publishing is and understand what owning your masters mean. If you could do so much with publishing and owning your masters, and benefit your family, for generations. Just if you know that much, and know where and know how to use it and how to manage it, and just love everybody. That's the other thing. Love everybody. People remember not what you do for them, but they remember how you made them feel. So, always have a kind heart, empathy towards others, and that's how you really establish that relationship with people in the business, because they're going to remember how you made them feel.
Yeah, the main thing I would say is be diligent. Be diligent with your craft, your gift. Just because things are not happening a certain way does not mean that you stop making music. You keep creating, even if no one else hears it, because again, you never know when that time will come to have to share it. Be diligent. Also, be watchful of people, and piggybacking off a couple of the other people, artists that just spoke, is be careful what you say to people. Be careful how you treat others. Treat others how you want to be treated. That's one of the things that I live by. And again, not burning bridges. Just because something goes bad does not mean you need to make an enemy. So that's one of the other things. And the last piece is due diligence. Due diligence. Like, do your research. If you come across someone that says, "Hey, I want to invest in you, I want to do this," remember, business takes time. If you got fast talkers, they will fast talk you out of your opportunity. And going around. And so, we've all been there, had those situations. So that's what I would say to that. But I also want to pivot and shortly into the next topic. But what we're going to do is kind of just do a round robin to talk about the role of artists in as far as the social justice movement that's going on now. Like, what is the responsibility of the artist, or your perspective in that? So I'm gonna start with Tammy. To see, as as an artist that I've, from the album Pretty, you spoke to a lot of social injustice with restitution and runaway and those types of things. So I wanted to transition to the next topic, but start with you on that, just to get your perspective on what the responsibility of artists are in this social movement that we're in now.
For me, I've always written about things that were going on in my life and how I responded to it in that time. Whether it was divorce, having children, getting married, or the state of Black people. So in 2016, I wrote this album called Pretty, and it was socially charged because we were going through an election, and a lot of Black people have been getting killed, and it just sent an alarm in me that I needed to write about. Like, every artist may not be like this, but for me, it's a little therapeutic to write my anger It doesn't sound like anger when I come out, but I swear I be angry. Uh, but music is a powerful tool for my healing and for my expression. So if it's powerful for me and it's coming to me, then I'm sure it will come through me and touch other people as well. So I created I like productions and theatrical concerts. So just like I did with Songs for Janie, which is another, it was a period piece, but it was brought to the 21st century because the issue that this woman had about her womanhood was something that I related to in a very powerful way, and that was Songs for Janie. So it's hard for me not to bring in what is happening right now in the world. I think it is a part of our responsibility. Well, as Nina Simone says, it's the artist's responsibility to document the time that we're in, or something like that. I might have misquoted just a little bit, but sorry, it is that for me. It may not be that for other artists. I mean, I think as an artist, you have this freedom to kind of do what you need to do. Some people might write about something totally opposite just because they need to focus on something else because it might be too heavy for them to write about,
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely, music is a powerful tool to move people. It can charge you. It can get you ready for war, and it can also bring about peace. So as an artist, you're the one to create. You're the owner of this, whatever it is you want to put out in the world. And for me, I can't help but do that. I have a song coming out now. It's called Dear
It? Okay.
It's actually out, but I haven't. I'm waiting for the music video to go along with this as I start to promote. But
that's exciting. I heard the
life.
song. I heard the song. I love it, and congratulations. I'm excited about the video.
Yeah, and I wrote it during quarantine. I captured every bit of what was happening for me in that moment. Me and Kennard had started writing a song every day, and I think we got up
Oh wow!
to about 7 days. But that's
I
write every day, but not full songs. But we do have, we were writing during that time. But this was one that I felt like needed to. It spoke for me about what's happening right now.
Yeah. That's great. Thanks, Tammy.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Kenny, you want to go?
Yeah, to kind of connect to what Tamara was talking about, artists have the potential to be a part of the healing process for people. It is an individual choice, and I personally consider it a part of my calling to use music to help foster healing. And not only is it something that I intentionally do, but it's something that's very natural to me. I think one thing that all artists have in common is that we're very sensitive, very empathetic, and we can feel stuff, whether it's things that people are going through or what we feel like our nation or a certain region is experiencing. We feel it. We feel things very deeply, and we're very sensitive. So I apply that to my creativity, and because I am a Christian and I'm a very spiritual person, I use my creativity through that lens to encourage people to find the light and to spread the light around them wherever they go. But one thing that I think is very important for all artists to remember, there will be generations and generations that will hear your music and be affected by the music, for the good or for the bad. I have seen young people in countries around the world when I go to give clinics who dress, talk, walk like Black American artists. And a lot of those stereotypes, they're not necessarily built on reality. So it can be very negative. It can have a negative impact on the advancement of culture and, Black culture in this specific example, but culture in general. So remember that you have a responsibility to yourself, to your community, and to the world to put out images and share content that you will be proud of for the rest of your life and, for the future of society.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you, Kenny. Dave, AJ? Either one, go ahead.
Both of y'all on mute.
Okay. Oh yeah. As I think I said it earlier in my closing, the time that we in is a perfect time for creatives to I believe music is also a document of history as well, some way, form, fashion. And so not necessarily for us to document what's going on, like literally document, every detail, but to give some type of expression, to a voice to what's going on, and express that in a way where it brings healing, it brings a thought, provocative, it brings knowledge, understanding, so forth. So yeah, I mean, as artists, we definitely have a role to play when it comes to what's going on.
How did your meditation music play a part in what's going on with everything?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that. It's like, because I said I'm a very spiritual person. God gave me this idea coming out of 2019, and how it came about was I had a friend of mine who actually started a like sort of like a calm app, and she called me up, and I worked with her in the past. I worked on her project. She's an artist. Her name is Alachi. And she said, "Hey, Dave, I got this idea. I want to come up with, I'm working on this app right now that's like a calm app, but it's, more about affirmations and so forth. And so do you have any kind of music that I could use, with this app and so forth?" And I said, I may have, I don't know, but, I love the idea because I always listen to meditation music on my own when I go to sleep and so forth. I said, I know exactly what you're talking about. I mean, I like to think of myself as a producer. I can produce anything. And so I was like, let me come up with something, and you tell me what you think. And so I came up with something. She was like, I love it and so forth. And then going like right around Christmas time, I just, through prayer, meditation, I just heard God just tell me, like, I want you to take what, that idea she gave you. I want you to make a project out of it. And so not even knowing what was going to come about. And I was like, well, first of all, that's different for me. Second of all, how would I even market it? Like, that's the first thing I thought about, how I'm going to market it and so forth. I got my own studio, so budget and stuff like that wasn't even an issue, but mainly in terms of recording, but mainly how I was going to market it. And so I just heard God tell me, release it on your birthday, which is April 1st. And it was so crazy that March, we going into this whole lockdown thing. And then come April, my birthday is April 1st. So when I released it, how I released it was, on Facebook, because on Facebook every year I get a lot of people wishing me happy birthday, a lot of people. And I respond to every last one of them. Like, I don't, for some people, they may not have time to sit down but I take out my whole birthday, literally, even with family, take out my whole birthday and respond to everybody that sends me a birthday wish. And this particular day, I responded with them saying, hey, go check out my album. Go check out my album. Go check out my album. And then I just kept getting reports back about, one of my friends, hit me up and said, David, I don't know what you were thinking about, but I needed this. Like, I needed this. Like, this helped me get through, work and everything like that. I'm working from home now, but I got my kids here and they running rampant and so forth. And so as soon as I put the music on, it like calmed everything down in the house. And I so needed it. So, for me, if it just touched one person, I know I've done my job, because this was an inspiration from God. It wasn't my idea to do this. I'm more on 808s and hot snares and hi-hats and stuff like that. Tammy, that's what I'm on.
Come on in here, Pastor Lindsey. Come on, Pastor Lindsey. You said if I touch one.
I'm on that,
right.
but God,
I love it.
I need you to go this direction and here for a little bit. And so now, I have a friend of mine that's helped me getting this into like some playlists and so forth. So now it's on a couple of playlists now so it's really generating the spins on Spotify and so forth. So, I'm grateful and thankful.
Yeah.
That's amazing, and love it. Absolutely love it.
You said it was under another name, Felix?
Yeah, Felix Wonder. Don't ask me why I did that. Well, I did it because, my other nickname around here in the studio is Felix, because Cliff always say, Felix the cat. I'm not really familiar with Felix the cat, but he was very particular. He always say I'm particular about, sounds and all that stuff. It got to be right for me, and so
you are particular. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we got same love, brother. Same love. We remember.
So he called me Felix, and so my favorite artist is Stevie Wonder, so I just combined Felix Wonder.
Oh, okay. So, love it.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to share the her app with us as well, in addition to links to your music.
Oh, you talking about Lalachi?
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great.
It's the app is called I gotta find it, but y'all keep talking and I'll find it.
Okay.
You got an AJ?
Man, I think that I guess the takeaway for the social justice movement, man, is we have to remember how powerful the thing that we wield is. We are atmosphere setters. So goes the music, so goes the community. One of my favorite artists is Marvin Gaye. What's going on? It was the soundtrack, and as our soundtrack moves throughout, we go from kind of aware music of what's going on in our communities to this, the rap thing kind of turned, and so did our communities, and so we have to be careful about what we're saying, even in our anger. We can say burn the roof down and it will burn. And so I think it's that, and then we have to be aware, I think, of the things that we're seeing, that the media, in our case, the record labels, will navigate our narrative. And we have to be a part of navigating that. What they release a lot of the times is not what's best for our communities. And so how do we combat that? How many, I think one of the things that you said, Candy, which is, I think, something that we don't talk about is we need more people that aren't necessarily musicians and want to be on the administrative side of the music thing, because we need people that are aware and really wanting to protect the legacy of our music.
Absolutely.
Because if we don't, then our narrative is shaped by people who don't look like us. It's shaped by people who don't want the things that we want.
Right.
And the messaging that they allow to go, you know, man, I think my biggest thing about the social justice movement is we can't defeat ourselves. If we don't address our issues at home, meaning within the family, then we allow this outside force, this force of, you know, we talk about racism and all of that stuff. We allow that to beat us because we don't know what we're saying and we don't understand our power. If we come together in our messaging, if we come together in the music that we produce and we start really pushing toward what we want to say as a culture, I think that we can't be stopped. I think we're stopped a lot of times because a lot of the times we're looking at the bottom line. And when we're dealing with this music industry, they will pay you as much as you want to be paid, as long as you say what they want you to say. You know, and so what's it worth? Is it worth your legacy? Do you want legacy or do you want money? You can get both, but one will take longer. And I believe legacy may take a little longer. You'll see money, but you can also get paid a lot of money to sell out. So, you know, I think that's a real deal. Is like, if we're going to have a cultural movement, when we talk about this music industry thing, let's do it. Let's get together. Let's surround each other and let's begin to have those conversations and put them in our music. You know, I have a client that I just worked with that released a record called Noose. And it literally is about, you know, the government standing on your head. But I think that noose works both ways. Are we tying each other up on the, you know, are we tying each other up on the tree ourselves? And if we are, how do we stop? So I think it's a big deal that we start talking about messaging. You know, can we talk beyond sex, drugs, and money?
Man, that is so true. I think we did before, and then it seemed like we took a turn, and then we just haven't left it. You know, so.
And right now our artists are, I'm not going to say we're struggling. We're doing well, but we're limited, because really, when we think about it, L.A. Reid, Sylvia Rhone are our last representation in the majors. And so now we're on these labels, these subsidiaries of the major labels. Even if we own a subsidiary, we're still controlled by the label. How are we going to get our power back? And I think it comes down to, and I'll say it, you know, all of us and the people watching this working together, because if we don't, then we are subservient to the ideas of the people who don't look like us. We're subservient to the ideas of people who don't want us to say what's good. You know, they're not going to fund us talking about good things. And I'm just going to be honest. If we don't fund it, if our artists who have made it, I love what Beyonce and Jay-Z have done. I may not agree with them always, but I have to say they have input it back into their communities. I love what some of these artists are doing. How can we do it as a conglomerate all together and say, hey, let's own something that represents us, that talks about what we do? How do we walk together? Is it worth me maybe taking $1 less to work with Dave? Absolutely. Is it man, to work with Kenny and Kennard? Absolutely. Because if we work together, then the end of it gives us power. And we make way more money, we live better lives, and our kids have something to stand on. And if we don't do this for our kids, if we don't do this for the generations that are behind us, then we have mishandled the power that we've been given.
It's so true. And I think it has to come, it boils down to forward thinking versus just thinking about the right now, the here right now, having a vision. You know, there are a lot of cultures out there that, you know, look 50, 100 years into the future. And that's something that, you know, we as a Black community in this country in particular could use, you know. We're getting the warning here about the time winding down. So, Sean, if you want to go ahead and give some closing thoughts, and then we'll just go around.
Finding the mute button.
Yes.
If I can, I think that comment about working together is really significant. It's very important. I wrote a few notes. First of all, there are resources out there to support us as artists, and we should be working to find those resources and support each other. Financial education, financial literacy is a key to our being successful in this industry. Understanding the business, reading the book, Everything You Better Know About the Music Business, or its updated version, whatever is out there now, is important to navigate those straits. I thought it was also important to note that music connects to spirit, and that impacts our legacy as people. The energy that we put into our music has an impact. And finally, we need to play the long game. Legacy takes longer, but we can have money and legacy if we're patient.
Yes, thank you. Tam, you want to go ahead? Real quick
No,
closing.
I was just saying yes.
Okay.
Yes to everything that was said. This has been wonderful. Thank you, Candy. Thank you, Kennard. Thank you, Sean, for this. Like, very important conversations and like the right people to talk about it. I can't wait to do it again, for real.
Lovely. Can't wait to have you again. Thank you for being here. Go ahead, Dave.
I second that emotion. You know, I'm grateful to you, Candy, and Kennard, and Sean. Thank you for inviting me on here, along with my friends that I've known for years and you know, work with, and glad to see that they are doing their thing and are successful in their own right. And I'm looking forward to working again with, you know, everyone. I've been working with Kennard here recently, even, you know, doing some tracking for me. But yeah, I'm just so grateful and grateful that we were able to have this conversation about music rights, and then our role in today's social, you know, social platform. And so I just, you know, want us to keep it going. You know, continue to have the conversation, keep talking about it, and shedding light and moving forward.
Yes, sir. Thank you. AJ, and then go ahead, Kenny, after him.
Man, I just want to say thank you guys. This has been the best birthday in a long time.
Wow.
Honestly, I got to hang with my friends, and I got to talk to people about like what's going on. It's my love. I love doing what I love this. I love being able to penetrate society and to shape and to mold different things by what I say and how I put it out. And so I'm looking forward to doing this. I know that there are countless conversations that are going on right now with A&Rs at top level. I know there are countless conversations going on with record label execs. And so, man, I'm hoping that we get an opportunity to do this again and to share. And I can't wait to hook up with my friends, Dave, Lindsey. I've known him, golly, Dave, it's been years. And so, and then Kennard, I dragged Kennard into the studio. Kenny, I'm looking forward to grabbing you, and Tam, you already know what's going on. So I just want to thank you guys, and I'm looking forward to the next time.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for those words. We appreciate it. Can't wait to work with you again.
Absolutely.
Kenny?
I want to say thank you to Poestry, the whole team, for having me be a part of this. I'm really humbled and grateful to really be a student. I'm being quiet, and trying to soak up as much as I can and put in my 2 cents here and there. But this has been really a very enriching conversation. And I too wholeheartedly believe that this must continue. We need more positive, reinforcing conversations in the music business and in all forms of business. We need more integrity in the field. And I think that was probably one of the kind of main takeaways that I got from the conversation tonight, that the integrity should be the foundation of it all, which is why Black artists have been struggling over the years, because the people at the top have not been integral.
Thanks, Kenny. Thanks for being here.
Pleasure.
Kennard?
Oh yeah, so just gonna, I guess, piggyback over everybody else. I think the main thing is that we are the mentors for the generation coming behind us, and we are the ones that are at the top to them. Because you got to remember, perspective is everything. So to some people, Kenny, Wesley, David, Lindsey, AJ, Tamara, y'all are rock stars. So and they're trying to get to where people think you are. But what better way to serve the people coming behind us by just showing humility and showing them things that no one showed us, so that they can get a bit further than we've gotten, by the time they're the age that we are. So that's all I would say.
Yeah, that's great and so true. I want to thank you all so much for being here. I could talk to you all for like days and months. Honestly, this has been so great. Thank you, AJ, for spending your birthday with us, and look forward to hearing more from all of you. Tammy, your new project, Dave, what you got going on, and AJ, what you've got going on. Kenny, can't wait to hear more from you as well. And I don't have to say anything about you, Pinar. Continue to make that great music and do the mentoring that I know you're all doing. We can make a difference in coming together. Like you said, AJ, conversations have to continue, but also we have to move to solutions. We've got to get to concrete action steps. This can be done, and it all starts local, right? You start with home, and then you expand out. So I just want to thank you all for watching, for being here with us. Please continue to connect with us. Go to our website, our Instagram and Facebook. Want to wish you all well. Stay safe, stay blessed, and take care. Thank you so much for being here tonight. On behalf of Poestry, thank you all. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Night.